Well, we follow into the next chapter as well as a color page detailing almost many of the casts of film Red, a movie I'm not gonna be able to see until much later. Well, when I lose my job, that won't matter. Yes, I will lose my job because I recently had an incident where may result that I cannot work anymore. But that's not the story about this. This is a story about this chapter, One Piece chapter 1065. Me, the Angry and my fan despair reviewer, although I technically only review one manga and I do bad reviews. This one. First off, we go back to Brook and Zoro, who stays behind because, well, they felt that it's a government island. Who's gonna break them out if they get captured? That's them, and I have to say that's very dumb of Zoro to say. Yes, he's the strongest, but he will get lost. He won't find them even if he tries. Brook is the only one who can find them because of his ghastly power, and that was his fault as well, but he is not strong, so he can't get captured anywhere else. It turns also out that they all knew that Kariba was in that barrel, so they actually, uh, he actually begged them to take them anywhere as long as it was off Wano, but not on a government island. But because Sora doesn't care, which Kariba gets mad. I'm still mad that Karoto was not part of that thing, but I really wish he would have kept her in his body so we could have a bargaining ship, but that's not gonna happen. Either way, Lilith leads them up some escalating stairs that are powered by fire, or something like fire that can be converted into types of energy. Uh, because she has thought of something called an undying flame, or at least trying to do a thing like an undying flame. If only there were such a thing as an undying flame, we could create our own sun. And then she walks through a wall while gets a call from Edison, which the other one follow. The Sanji team falls into the room where Nami is greedily wondering if there's future treasure, where they actually run into Seraphim 04, who actually has been stepping out from a big biological tank, mind you, and it's said to be 98%. Is that implying that it's 98% clear? This Seraphim is a clone of Jinbei. And yes, it still has the Lunarian wings, it still has the Lunarian hair color, and yes, even the Lunarian skin, even though a fishman has many different skin color. Of course, the Sanji team gets confused on what they are actually seeing, and even gets more confused at the fact that it looks like Jinbei, even though this one, they say that it looks like a child, but the Seraphim Jinbei also seem to have the size of regular Jinbei, wondering if it's a son or turn into a child, which is kind of ironic given the fact that we just met a girl who has a devil fruit that can turn you into a child. But Frankie in the end thinks that it must be number 4, a pacifista. And yes, even this Seraphim Jinbei has lasers in his palms. Also a bracelet that seems to be made of water. So the battle starts and Usopp wonders it was set up. And so the gang tries to fight it, even though Nami is saying that just because you're a child I won't go easy, which is kind of contradicting because I felt that she didn't want to attack a child. But then things get a little bit strange as the Seraphim Jinbei dives underground and swims, very akin to a power that we have seen before. Yes, that looks very similar to the Senor Pink's Suisui no Mi, which actually brings forth a very interesting situation. 2 of them, in fact. Because we cannot assume that Senor Pink is dead, but he was captured. So is it very possible that in number 2 of these all, that Vegapunk somehow managed to clone the Susu no Mi? Well, an SBS said that Caesar's limitation of devil fruit copying was only for animals, aka sown fruits, but that formula was unstable, so that wasn't a big success. He has implied that Vegapunk's knowledge is far superior. Well, it always was far superior than Caesar, but he mentioned it's so far superior that he may actually been able to clone other devil fruits. And now, if we assume that Senor Pink is not dead, it appears he has succeeded, because Seraphim Jinbei is swimming in the surface and grabbing to Jinbei's throat. Nami's throat. And even by saying Jinbei's name, the Seraphim Jinbei, who has star eyes by the way, gets mad. Of course, Sanji also gets mad because it's death for him, and uses his Diablo Jambe to kick the Seraphim away. Even Robin shows a very uncharacteristic big anger of that reason. I wonder if she's mad that the Seraphim Jinbei attacked Nami, or mad that someone who is an ally, who looks like an ally, is attacking another ally, because she felt that it's dishonoring to both that ally's memory and the fact that it's endangering someone she cares for. She's actually now using her Giganteflor attack more than 4 Sea Serpent Dragon, but it swims through the ground, and it actually turns out that by doing that, the ground actually becomes like water, because Seraphim Jinbei can actually grab that ground similar to water, apparently implying it can use Fishman Karate, even though having Devil Fruit is a very big no-no for a fishman, because now they no longer can swim. Granted, however, it may actually not matter to a Seraphim clone, because as you see, they primarily have DNA of Lunarians, and Lunarians has black wings which allow them to fly. It was mentioned before Jinbei even had a devil fruit, it would be a flying fruit. But he also mentioned that he shouldn't have a devil fruit because it will severely weaken him because he's more effective in water. So this seems to imply that if you give someone like a fisherman something like the Suisui no Mi, then they technically can still swim, just not in water. So they don't lose their ability to swim, they just lose the ability to do that in water. And since he has Lunarian DNA, which is basically controlling fire, then swimming in the water would have been a disadvantage anyway, even though technically Sanji can lighten up his own fire legs even in the depths of sea, but maybe a Lunarian cannot. Or maybe they can. It's just not as powerful. So why not just give a Seraphim Jinbei, someone who has both a fishman and Lunarian DNA, a fruit that allows him to swim, so he can still use his fishman karate, just not of the water. I can see the concept. It's actually pretty good. Usopp tries to attack, but then the Seraphim grabs him. Until the weird thing is that those that are watching the battles, yes, the other Vegapunks, only says to Seraphim Jinbei, who by the way they call S-Shark, which I don't really know what that means. I thought they were gonna call him SG or something like that. I mean, Jinbei is something like talk for something along the line of shark, but what I'm trying to say is what can the other clones be named? I thought they were gonna be named as Boa, as Hawk, or something like that. Either way, the one who's watching the battle primarily is a tiny robot-looking satellite, Dr. Vegapunk Edison, aka the Thinker. Apparently mentioning that they haven't even tested the Seraphim children on lasers yet, because they're not ready for that one. And Lilith is there, apparently having been called to them to get into the lab, and getting mad at the fact that they're damaging the Seraphims, given how much they cost. Since she's so greedy about money, that makes sense. And so Edison gets a new idea and leaves Pythagoras to deal with it, who by the way also looks like a robot. In fact, more robot looking than even Edison, and even apparently based on some kind of old Japanese mascot from a TV show, something like that, I've heard. Pythagoras the Wise. It's very apparent here that they're not doing this because they were, well, maybe a little bit set up, but they are not doing this to capture the Strats, at least not what it means like. It was more of the fact that they needed combat data. They had a Jonko crew here, they have Seraphims here, so why not letting a Seraphim, who is supposed to replace the warlords, mind you, who's supposed to be weapons, why not use them for combat data? The Strats versus Seraphim, so they can see how well they falter and then modify them. So this is all just a battle test. And then as Edison writes plans, he says to York, who is another female by the way, and strangely also looks human. So why is it that only the female satellites seem to look like humans? I don't know why. But York apparently eats and then even poops and finally sleeps for the other who works, bringing a very interesting dynamic, so to speak, as we see York the Greed, who by the way has very little clothing and stuff like that, a young girl with freckles and panties and stuff like that. But this brings a very interesting parallel to all the satellites. I had hoped they were all modified humans in even different species, but unfortunately that is not the case, because it seems to imply instead that yes, all the satellites are robots. Granted, that's not the case given the fact that the only one who looks like robots in the flesh are Edison and Pythagoras. But it was mentioned that when Luffy punched Atlas, a clanking noise was heard, similar to a machine. And given the fact that they all seem to be Vegapunk, it wouldn't be so far-fetched that he could download his brain or his mind into robots. What makes it even more interesting is the fact that they seem... It's difficult to put it in words, but they don't appear to be a hive mind, per se. Each one seems to have a different personality. Each one seems to do something different things. Lilith seems to be the voice of destruction and evil to find and money issues at the same time do things just to get research. Edison seems to be someone who always thinks because he's the thinker and comes up with idea. Pythagoras seems to be someone who always analyzes because he mentions something very interesting about this Seraphim clone, saying something like they are evolving as they grow. Does that mean that the lineage factor in them records the individual experience? Apparently implying that when they cloned them based on the seven warlords, they had hoped that their blood, which hold the battle knowledge, would actually influence the Seraphims, which I also thought. And they also wonder if the growth acceleration, implying that they may even be able to grow them stronger. But they also mention something like Pulse be infinite, more green blood. I don't really know what that green blood is though. But finally, what I was going to mention about this hive mind situation is that York appears to be the eater, the one who eats, sleeps and crafts for the other one else. And we finally see the full picture of Shaka, who, well, looks like a man, at least. The good, who Shaka appears to be the leader, and most reasonable-minded of them all. This brings forth the question, though. All of these are Vegapunk, yet at the same time they're not the real Vegapunk. But it seems that Vegapunk has created a very interesting situation. Because as long as York, at least it's implied that it is only York, given the fact that she's the greedy, or the desires, it seems that she eats, sleeps and crafts for all the Vegapunks. Meaning that all the other Vegapunks can just work every single hour they want, as long as someone sleeps, eats or crafts for them. That is a very interesting dynamic, because that basically means Vegapunk is working 24/7. That's a very genius way. But how is that connected? They must be robots, somehow, for that to work. Edison stops the battle with the Seraphim and strangely listens to them. He nails down their... and Lilith doesn't really like that because it's ruining the best part. But he nails them down with magnetism in floor because, well, they are pirates. And once again says that he's Vegapunk, but they don't really understand. But Frankie still gets excited and wants to know more about all this Vegaforce and everything else. And he doesn't want them to be enemies because he wanna see everything. But the chapter ends though that do you think this is the future? But Shaka says it is actually the past. And finally we switch to the idiot duo of Chopper and Luffy, together with the smart one Jinbei and the dumb Bonnie, who has actually found a big giant robot in scrap yard. Apparently, as Shaka says, that once upon a time, exceptionally 900 years ago, technology like this existed everywhere, confirming the very long-standing theory that the ancient kingdom is only ancient in time, not in advancement. And Egghead Island is not the island of the future, it is the island of future tech that came from the past, or more likely that future tech that was invented in the past. And now even more reasons are up why the government want Vegapunk dead. Because he has figured all of this out. He is too dangerous. And it once again shows that the government have done everything to, just like TV tropes has guessed, they have done everything to keep the technological achievements of this world to a minimum. Almost like a stone age. Even though they've added some modern thing, it's clear they've only been doing that because even they needed that power. But they have refused to share the most advancements with the rest of the world. And given that the Egghead Island is an island of the future, they say, it is very likely that they are cancelling Vegapunk's funds because they know he wants to spread this to everything else, and they don't want that. So Luffy, Chopper, Jinbei and Bonnie finds a big giant mech, and of course Luffy says that I want to ride it, let's go, and that can only spell trouble. So whatever happens, I don't know, but at least we have some interesting reveals of it all. We finally see all the other satellites. I'm disappointed they're not other species. I'm disappointed that they're robots. Granted, that's not confirmed, but I highly think they are robots. Especially Pythagoras. I mean, his head is basically a mini model that Edison seems to be based on. Still not clue who Stella is, but I'm pretty sure Stella is the real Dr. Vegapunk. So that's basically this chapter. It was solid. New news, new mystery. And this basically confirms that all the old Shibukai are Seraphim. We have seen Seraphim Boa, Mihawk, Kuma and Jinbei. Now we only have Don Flamingo and Moriel and Crocodile left. That granted, should we assume that they have a Buggy, a Law, and a Weevil as well? I wonder. You know, it would be so comedic if they actually have a Buggy. And do you imagine how comedic it would be if that Buggy Seraphim actually proves to be kind of useless? Because if there's anyone who has the least amount of combat data, it should be Buggy. I mean, he did experience some combat as an apprentice on Roger's ship, but that's the only thing we have seen him do in that time. In the future, he hasn't shown anything. And Moria, he became lazy after the end of Kaido. Moreover, if Don Flamingo is cloned, that is actually kind of dangerous because he has high combat data. But can he be controlled? I don't know. But it seems to imply also that the Vegapunks have given the Seraphims cloned devil fruits. Very likely though. So who has what? Is it possible that they have taken all from the Don Quixote family? I mean, they did have some stupid yet very effective powers. So the chances are pretty high. But you give me your thoughts if you have any.